Wow, even the recording was delayed. Hi, everybody. Welcome to L&D Talk. Today is Tuesday, and we're talking Tech Tuesday. So on Tuesdays, we call it Tech Tuesday so that we basically just have a broad range of topics to choose from. And today we're talking virtual reality.
L&D Talk. L&D Talk. With your host, Brent Slanker.
Excellent. That was the old one. I thought I'd play that one instead of the newer one. We haven't heard that one in a while. So yeah, thank you very much. That is a cool intro. That is our wonderful, talented Vid Friday co-host Sam Rogers doing the intro work for us. And my name is Brent Schlenker. I am the core Cheap it. I just never know what I am. I am the Chief Learning Officer for litmus.com. Easy for me to say. You can check out my blog at litmus.com/blog. You can check us out on Twitter at Litmus. But we are doing some exceptionally cool stuff. Well, I shouldn't say we. I should say the awesome technical engineers and folks that are responsible for creating what is the coolest software as a service learning management system that I've had the pleasure of using. So. And being a part of it is even more fantastic. So we've announced some VR stuff. We announced some new BizOps software that we're calling Litmus Training Ops, and also dealing with robots. So we'll talk a lot more about that later. But today we're talking virtual reality, and virtual reality is near and dear to my heart for multiple reasons. But one of them in particular is just that I got into it really early on, back in the day when it went through its first Gartner hype curve, right? When it originally was on the front end of that curve. It was brand new. It was hyped up big time. This is 20 years ago. There was a big push in the 90s for virtual reality, but it was at the time, for certain projects, it was viable and not all that expensive, but still you're talking $100K. So if you have a high risk, training opportunity, virtual reality was probably well worth, the 6-figure price tag, and not to mention maintenance and all that kind of stuff. Airplane simulations, all that. So, wait a minute. So hold that thought. Miranda, who usually pops into our events, just sent me a message saying that she wishes she was going to be here, but she can't because she's hosting a virtual reality simulation right now, or she's in one, which is hilarious. And I think that's awesome. So anyways, minor tangent, but anyways, so back to 20 years ago. So it was expensive, or at least everybody thought it was really expensive. And we were still dealing with Intel 486 processors and, no such thing as integrated graphics cards and all that stuff yet. And so it was not all that easy to create interactive virtual reality simulations. However, and there was a tool that I found called Superscape. It does not exist anymore. It was a German company. They shifted to being a mobile game development company, utilizing their 3D technology. But their software was very cool. When I first purchased it, it ran on DOS. And it had everything you needed to create a virtual reality space, virtual reality simulation. And you could plug in those interactive gloves. The helmets at the time worked perfectly fine for it. They had the drivers and all of that. But what we discovered was that it was really just a great tool for making interactive 3D simulations. And so we opted out for all the expensive hardware and decided to go with the standard gaming controller style interface. So the WASD keyboard controls, or using the arrow keys and mouse clicks in order to maneuver through the 3D space. So it was virtual reality software, but we were using it as kind of like game development software, because it really ended up turning out to look like a game. And at the risk of getting too nostalgic, one of the very, very, very first conferences that accepted one of my proposals to speak was the eLearn DevCon, and it was put on by Garen Hess. And the first time they put it on, or maybe it was the second time, I'm not sure, but it was at the University of Oregon, and it was very small. But I was psyched to speak at it. And I pitched a virtual reality session, and they wanted me to do it. I think they asked me to do like 4 sessions. I pitched 4 or 5, and they picked all 4. I think it was because they were just kind of shocked that anybody would in the e-learning industry knew about that point or would even submit to speak. So, yeah. And Intel was right there in Oregon, so I could just hop on the Intel shuttle from Chandler up to Oregon, and so it didn't cost them anything for me to travel and whatnot. So anyways, so let me show you this. This is the intro I used. I was expecting a large crowd. There was all of about maybe 6 or 7 people in this tiny little classroom inside the University of Oregon. But I was prepared anyways. I was super pumped up back in the day. Oh man, are they not going to let me play this video? Oh, there it goes. There's a delay. Shock. So I use this. I put this on a looper and just looped it on a playback while everybody was walking into the room. All 6 or 7 of the attendees that decided they wanted to check out virtual reality. But the video is good because it just gives you kind of a bit of an idea of what it looked like and what we created using the virtual reality software. And we embedded it inside of Macromedia's director. Which, by the way, I was a huge fan of Director. It was one of the most awesome tools. So you can take a look there. I'm just going to leave that up. And let's just talk about it briefly. So you probably saw how that worked. I'm going to walk you through a different version. So that was kind of the intro that we did. And let me pick one of these. I think this is a good one because it shows a lot more of the movement. Oh, yes, for sure. This is the one. All right. Oh, do I have to close this one first? And everybody that's watching this currently on the recorded version, the YouTube version, they still not have figured out how to integrate embedded videos that I play during this. And for that, I apologize. They might show up on the Blab version of the recording. So you can go there, go to my profile, blab.im/bschlenker, and you'll be able to see all of this. Or just, I think the links to all of these are hidden. So you can just send me a tweet or something, and I'll shoot you the links and you can check these out. So this is what we did. So you can see we had a 3D space. The 3D space was created by Superscape. So literally this was, you could move in 3 dimensions, right? And this is obviously very simplistic version of what the warehouse looked like. But they would get these boxes on these carts. The box would come with a document. You can see the document, right there. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse moving on the screen. I don't know if they show that, but I just clicked on it. Then they move over to SAP. This is the SAP warehouse module that you would see the data that you just scanned in. You'd click through some of these screens, verify stuff, and then switch back to the 3D world. So a couple labels would print out. You would tear them off, right? And so I just basically simulated by clicking on those, that's tearing them off. Then you go back, you do another, you verify the box, you look at the data, you look at the box, you make sure all the information is correct. Then you go back to the 3D world, and I just did a wrong step. So the directions went red. That's what happened there. And so it would give you feedback, right? I was a good little instructional designer back in the day. And then giving immediate and proper feedback was very important. And so I corrected myself, did the right movement. Look, and you can see to the left there is click here to scan items. So if you want to move an item, you just clicked on it if it was movable. But if you needed, if the process meant you have to scan something, you had to go through and click that scanner button to make sure you were in scanning mode. So it was it ended up being exceptional reinforcement for them to remember, oh yeah, I got to pick up the scanner, and this is a scanner, a scanning step in the process. So this was actually the second iteration of the virtual reality simulations that I created back then. The first iteration just had the virtual reality space and not this the interface. So what you're seeing here with the blue, the interface around the edges, that's all Macromedia Director. The Director MX, like you saw from the advertisement. And Director was awesome. I wanted to use it for managing our client parts and repair processes. I thought he was going crazy and I would get promoted. Yeah, that was the year. 1994 was when I did this. When I first started doing this, it was probably, it was 94, 95 when I first did the first iteration of this. It was pre-Intel. The very, very first simulations that I created was for a French-Italian semiconductor manufacturer called SGS Thompson Microelectronics. They opened up a fabrication facility in Phoenix, and that was really one of my first full-time gigs out of graduate school. So despite the fact that I'd been a contractor at Intel, full-time gig was at SGS Thompson. But anyway, so back to the VR stuff. So really the impetus for this was, to Ajay, to your point, my manager was the one that pushed me on this. I told him that it wasn't possible, that we couldn't do it. It was too expensive. It was too complicated. I gave him all the reasons why we couldn't do it. And much to his credit, as a fantastic leader, he said, I want you to try anyways. This was something that he wanted to do and get done. And he, obviously he had more faith in me than I had in me at the time, which I am eternally grateful to him for giving me this chance. He basically said, head over to Silicon Valley, fly over there for a day, and just hang out, schedule some appointments at every single virtual reality studio you can possibly find, hardware, software, whatever it is, and learn everything you can about virtual reality. And so I did. I found Superscape. It was my very last stop of the day before I had to run to the airport to catch my flight. And it was worth it. All in that one day, we figured everything out. So it was awesome. I mean, it was very, very cool. So this was the early day virtual reality, right? And like I said, you could very easily plug in a headset, and Superscape was so awesome. With the drivers it had, it would automatically convert what I had done to the keyboards for the navigation, and it would have automatically just translated that into the headset. And there might have been a little tweaking to do to it, because we did do some testing, but we just decided it just really wasn't absolutely necessary to go to those lengths and put that together. So this was, this was the early days, and I've told this to people before. This particular training that I created at SGS Thompson, and then this version of it at Intel, by far the most effective training solution that I have created to date, bar none, hands down. It was an incredibly eye-opening experience to be a non-believer and then actually just be forced to create something and try and see how impactful it was. And the big piece that was so impactful, and this is something that I think everybody needs to understand, is that fidelity doesn't matter, right? You'll notice in that video, everything is just a cube, right? I had to teach myself 3D modeling and how to build things in a 3D space. I had to learn a whole new piece of software. And so it was not easy. It was an exceptionally steep learning curve. But I knew what I wanted, and I knew the tool could do it. And so I just struggled through it and figured it out. And you'll notice that all of those objects in the world, let me pull up a different version of the video. All of the objects were just cubes, right? The entire simulation is based simply on cubes. Here's 21 seconds. And so, so fidelity doesn't matter. It is, if you're looking for complete immersive reality, you're going too far, and you're spending way too much money and too much time, to make that kind of thing happen. It's not necessary. Oops, sorry, I got to get back here and drop this in. This is a shorter version of the video, but yeah, what I learned, and this wasn't just me looking at it and claiming this. We actually tested it, and we put people through the simulation. We weren't allowed to have technicians go through the simulation. The engineers said the technicians were always too busy, and there's not enough time for it, and they have to, they're doing their jobs, cranking out the wafers and all that kind of stuff. And so So basically, I took sales and marketing people and I put them through these simulations. And these processes were like 25-step processes, most of them. And I could get sales and marketing folks to memorize and completely know exactly what the work was that needed to get done in less than an hour. Or of them, most of them completed it around 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. But in all the write-ups that we did, we always just said under an hour, because I didn't think people would believe us if we said, 30 minutes is all that takes for you to memorize the job you have to do. And then we validated it. We took them out to the warehouses. We took them into the semiconductor manufacturing facility, whatever the simulation was, and asked these sales and marketing people. Obviously, we couldn't touch product, but I just said, okay, I'm the student. You are the teacher. Tell me what my job is. How do I do this? And every single one of them walked me through these processes without any errors at all, 100%. And it was, they could look, my point is this, from a fidelity standpoint, it was very easy for them to look at, say, this object, see the blue object that's to the left of the computer. I mean, obviously the computer is probably the most real looking object there, but that's just a computer with an image texture mapped over that front facet. So is the keyboard underneath it. It's a cube, basically a rectangle cube object with a picture of my keyboard that I just snapped, and I texture mapped that over the top of the rectangle. I mean, it really was that simple and that easy. But everybody knew just by the shape and the size of this blue cube right here next to the computer that was the printer. All of the label printers were blue, and they were about that size and shape relative to the computer, and they were all placed to the left. So I didn't have to texture map anything onto that and waste processing time having to process another image. I probably didn't even need to put images onto the computer, but we did anyways, just for I don't even remember why. I don't even, probably just practicing or whatnot, but it wasn't absolutely 100% necessary. And so just an exceptionally simple simulation like this, from a learning perspective and the work that we do, this is incredibly powerful. And it really opened up a lot of eyes and literally blew a lot of minds when we were able to do this, because these are steps and processes that used to take a week or more. So they would go, trainees, the original process was trainees would go and learn SAP, right? The software, and it would be all just software training in a room, and just basically learning at the interface, and zero context at all. They just taught them all the functions, how to go through and do it, maybe some of the processes that they would be asked to do. Then they would go into the warehouse, and somebody through, just job shadowing or, OJT, somebody would just basically show them the process and walk them through it. And then they would basically be cut loose to put the two pieces together, right? You got the physical process and the software process. This, obviously, we reduced, obviously we still needed some OJT, right? They had to go in and still do it, but the trainees were much further along than they were previously when they got to the OJT part. So instead of a week's worth of classroom training, we did 30 minutes of simulation time, and they were pretty much good to go to get out on the floor and start, shadowing somebody and start looking at it and practicing in the real space and figuring it out. Obviously, because warehousing really isn't that complex either, you don't have to worry about it too much, but consider the cost savings of, reducing a training program, a classroom training program, from a week down to 30 minutes. That's some significant dollar savings. And Ajay, to your point earlier, that is what sold it more than anything to the business. despite the fact that it cost a lot of money, a lot of mistakes, and it took me a lot of time to get through the learning curve. They were not very happy with me, I will just say, with how much time I spent putting this together. And Intel was very happy with it because I actually, so SGS Thompson actually had to pay for my research, my R&D to develop it. And they got a handful of simulations out of it. And then they just figured they didn't want to deal with it anymore. They thought it was too expensive or something. And so they cut the program. And so I was left with doing just other basic training stuff. But I'd already tasted what real, technology-based training could look like, and was very disillusioned. So I left that job, and that's when I went back to Intel and started building them at Intel. So that's kind of that story. Took a lot longer than I thought, but there's a lot of important parts here, I think. I mean, this is why, even though this was 20 years ago, there is all of these same issues apply to virtual reality today. There is, the idea of, so obviously the technology is better. So hands down, you can process things a lot faster. You're going to be able to create much more realistic environments. And so, because you can very quickly, you don't have to worry about saying, oh, we're not going to worry about fidelity. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. If you've got the processing power and you can do it, go for it. But this might be a good time to talk about the differences between different types of virtual reality, or what people are calling virtual reality. And as Litmus starts to get into supporting the different virtual formats and the different virtual reality platforms and integrating those players into the LMS, it's different, right? The experience is very different. So imagine you couldn't necessarily do what I did here in just 360 video. And yet a lot of people are, categorize 360 video as virtual reality because we have new and different software in the mobile devices that you can put into things like Google Cardboard, or some of the other more advanced, virtual reality headsets that you can just snap your phone into and watch virtual reality videos or interactive 3D videos, how that works. So there's that level. There's the 360 video experience that I will still call virtual reality. And it's just a different level of engagement and interactivity. It's lower cost, easier to produce, all that kind of stuff. But the part I will tell you that, in my opinion, that makes it virtual reality and still very impactful is the idea that it's put into the glasses and you can wear the headset. I think a lot of people think the headsets are dorky and too big and too clunky, and it's just, that's the part that they hate for some reason. I don't know why, but I look at it this way: having experienced multiple different versions of the headsets and the different virtual reality systems now, the thing that the headset does for you is that it completely blocks out all the other distractions. So even though you're in watching a 360-degree video, you really, really feel like you're transported to a different place. You are not where you were before, especially if you have a headset and are watching a video with great 3D audio. And so you've got your ears covered, you're listening to the environmental sounds of that 360-degree video, and you're watching it, and everything else around you is blocked out. I mean, when we talk from a learning design perspective and how we learn, focus, targeted interactivity and full-on engagement, there's no better way that I can see that you can get that than submersing somebody into a space, into an environment with that headset. And it means literally, not literally, it just means transporting them visually and emotionally to a different space, to a different area than where they're at. So lots of different opportunities there. This we would call, fully interactive, virtual space, right? What you're looking at isn't real life, but you can move around it in 3 dimensions, and you can interact with things. So your mouse can click on these boxes, you can click on the printer, you can do things, you can interact with the objects. That's a whole different level of virtual reality than what 360 video can offer you. But like everything else we talk about, all of the media that we discuss, it depends on your use case, right? And all of those different environmental factors, contextual factors, everything that we currently analyze in order to decide which medium would be most appropriate, this applies exactly the same way. So when we say virtual reality, what we're really saying is different virtual reality media, right? All of the different versions of virtual reality, and you got to pick one. You can't just say, we're going to do virtual reality training. It's, you need to understand and be able to clarify, all of the different types of what's being put underneath the umbrella of virtual reality. And that's what I meant. So to kind of come full circle as we get close to the end of the hour here, that's the part that I want to sort of head off at the pass with our industry and try as best we can as an industry of training and learning and development professionals to not create our own stupid words for this technology. It's another medium that we have in our toolbox to choose. Actually, it's multiple different new ones. It's 360-degree video. Let's call it that. Maybe if it's a fully immersive experience, let's call it that. I mean, I don't know exactly what words we should be using, but let's just not get too fancy with it. Let's let the technology industry take the lead, see what they call it, and let's embrace that, right? Let's not create our own damn world of words and just muck things up for everybody. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and I just want to see it. I want to see our industry get better at dealing with technology and not trying so hard to, pretend like we've invented something new when we haven't. So that's my shtick there. The other thing is this. In my opinion, based on this experience, the most useful, I guess, content that you can create, or the biggest problems that we are dealing with as training professionals, this type of VR that I've created, that's fully interactive, best applies when you've got both a physical process and a software process. This combines the whole context of the job into one simulation. And that is the key, is being able to blend the software experience and physical space experience and have a learning process. I mean, you don't need any sort of pre-work for this. You don't need, you really don't even need any sort of like objectives, to put at the front end of this. I literally put sales and marketing people in front of the computer and just said, play this game. Here are the instructions at the top. You're going to have a step action list on the left. Here's a couple of buttons you need to be aware of, and go for it. And then when you feel like you've memorized or are very comfortable with the process, on the lower left-hand side here, you may not have looked more closely, but if you look at the video, I've got 4 different modes. One's called teacher, the other one's called guided, and the other one's called on your own. And you could progress through that by clicking those buttons. If the teacher mode had the step action table on the left and the instructions across, the detailed instructions across the top, when you shifted into guided mode, the instructions across the top disappeared, and all you had to go on was the step action table, which also, by the way, doubled as job support. What's the word I'm looking for? The performance support stuff, just a list, literally a printed list that people could take with them and have in their pocket or tape up on their, computer monitor, so they knew the step action list that they needed. But then, of course, when they got down to on your own, all of the guidance, all of the instruction went away. Nothing showed up, and you had to go through the process on your own. So we stepped them through this very carefully. And like I said earlier, everybody, sales and marketing people, were able to go into a highly skilled manufacturing environment and talk me through 25 steps of advanced processes. So it's valuable. It's so cool. And this is why I am very bullish on where it's at today, because today's technology, some people are claiming that it's still too expensive and blah, 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 blah. If you did any of this back in the, when it was first peaking, and, the last 20 years, it's been in the trough of disillusionment, right? VR is starting to pull out of that now. And, it is very, very, very different today, and it's real. And there's no stopping this VR train that's going right now. There's far too much venture capital money being pushed into it. There's far too many creative people that have been looking for an outlet like virtual reality and all of the different media types, the different types of virtual reality that are available. And it's definitely the next step, without a doubt. It's not a trend. It's not going away. It is absolutely here to stay. And, I'm sure I will get naysayers. I always do, right? You all think I'm crazy about Snapchat too, and that's okay. But yeah, for those of you who weren't here yesterday, you missed the Snapchat conversation, but that's all right. But anyways, so that's my monologue on virtual reality from the past. So maybe next time we talk VR, we can talk about those different media types, right? Anthony adds VR stuff with the Unity engine. Yes, Unity currently is a gaming platform that is, I think, the primary development environment for a lot of this, the fully interactive, non-video based virtual reality development, and the gaming stuff especially, and those paint programs that are, I think they call them Tilt VR or something like that. I think those are developed in that as well. But there's a lot of great stuff out there that's going on. And so, the e-learning world needs to hold on to its hat, because once there becomes an authoring tool, and the race is on, I can tell you right now, the race is on for us. Who's going to be the articulate storyline of virtual reality, right? Who's going to be, the virtual reality of Captivate, or who's it going to be? I don't know what tool is going to pop up. You think every instructional designer is going to learn Unity? I don't think so. It is a very, very, very complex development environment, and it's not an easy tool to learn, unless they've come out with like a light version that I'm unaware of, Anthony. I could be totally wrong. Well, Unity is used primarily for games, but it's not designed for games. It's designed for virtual worlds. Oh, well, perfect. There you have it. That is why most people are using it. So companies won't pay for it, or at least any that I worked for. Right. So also Nick Floro built a great virtual world course for us a while back using something else. It depends how complex you want to get or how interactive. Yeah. Yeah. So like anything else, right? Folks, listen, this is no different than the transition back in the 90s, early 90s, maybe late 80s, if you were really into technology-based learning earlier. It took us forever to get companies to realize spending the money on advanced computers for corporate training departments was necessary, that moving to e-learning was a thing, or CBTs at the time, that it was valuable. That process took forever. There are still people still fighting that battle. Should we do online training or not? Right. And yeah, Ajay, I'm right there with you. This is the next step in media technologies, but it's also the end game, as far as I see it. This is it. There's nothing else. We've mastered text, we've mastered audio, we've mastered video, animation, all that kind of stuff. We know how to do it. We have rapid development tools. All that stuff is just better, faster, and cheaper. The only new thing, and really the last thing, is recreating reality. And it's going to go through the same process that all the e-learning tools went through. It's going to be clunky at first. It's going to look a little goofy. We're going to have weird goggles to wear. We're not going to be able to figure out the difference between 360 video. Is that virtual reality, or is it fully immersive Unity developed gaming virtual reality? Multiplayer spaces, is that virtual reality? It's all virtual reality, in my opinion, when you're taking somebody out of their current state, their current physical space and context, and being emotionally and mentally and visually put into a different space, or a different location of some sort. Right? It's all very different, but it's going to go through the same process. But really, if you think about it, if you want to learn how to do something, if you can just practice it in a safe environment, what else do you really need? Right? I mean, literally, what else do you need? Do you want to read about it in a book, or do you want to jump into the real world and just start playing with it? Do you want to read a book about what it's like to have fought in the Civil War, or do you want to actually jump into a virtual world and fight in the Civil War? That kind of reality stuff is way, way, way down the road, but it's legit. It's getting there, and that's where it's going to go. It's not there yet, but it's going to get there. And we are only in the very, very, very early days of this stuff. And it's one of the reasons why I say I am once again excited about being in our industry, because we finally have something new to sink our teeth into and to start using really well. So very, very exciting stuff. And it's 9:00, and everybody, this has been a blast. I didn't get a chance to read all of the text, all of the chat, but it looked like it was going pretty strong. I'll close this out real quick and just say thanks everybody for hanging out. My name is Brent Schlenker. I'm the Chief Learning Officer at litmus.com. You can get a hold of me at bschlenker on Twitter, at litmus on Twitter. You can send me email, brent@litmus.com, or you reach out in any other way. If you're looking for a learning management system, or if you just want to learn more about the incredible new features that we just launched, like the Litmus Training Ops, or Litmus VR, or the Litmus Robotics, it's all going to be very, very, very cool and very, very fun stuff. So I hope everybody learned a little bit today, even though it was just me speaking for an hour on this. But you'll be hearing me talking a lot about it in the future. So also, everybody, before I let you go, hit up the tldc.com and learn about a new event that I am very excited to be the host of, not just a speaker, but I get to host an entire event, which is going to be lots of fun. So thetldc.com, check it out, and go ahead and get registered. We still got discounts going, I think, the last I saw. So get dialed in now and get the cheap fare. So anyways, thanks everybody for playing. We'll talk to you soon. We'll see you tomorrow for BizOps Wednesday, which will normally have my co-host Ajay Pangakar, but he's out for the next few weeks. And I think Khan Sotitis is going to be sitting in for him tomorrow. So we'll see if he actually wants to be awake at 1 o'clock Australia time. So anyways, thanks everybody. We'll talk to you later. Adios.